Okay, the global energy order, it literally just shattered. On April 28, 2026, the United Arab Emirates officially announced they are terminating their membership in OPEC and the wider OPEC Plus alliance along with it. Make no mistake, this isn't just some minor policy tweak or a temporary protest. This is a massive, historic, and totally permanent structural realignment of the Middle East. We're talking about witnessing geopolitical tectonic plates shifting in real time. It's going to completely transform how the world prices and consumes its most vital commodity.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of this, just think about this number, 59 years. The UAE first joined OPEC through Abu Dhabi all the way back in 1967. Think about that. That's 4 years before the UAE was even officially formed as a federation. They have been a core, foundational pillar of this cartel for nearly 6 decades. But effective May 1st, 2026, they're walking away. It's a move that has absolutely sent shockwaves through the global energy order. But honestly, when you dig into the underlying data, you realize these cracks have been forming for a long time.
Now, if you want to understand the exact geopolitical breaking point, just look at this striking statement from UAE Presidential Advisor Anwar Gargash. During that devastating US-Israel-Iran war that erupted in early 2026, the UAE absorbed hundreds of ballistic missiles and drone strikes. They obviously expected military and political solidarity from their neighbors under the Gulf Cooperation Council's Mutual Defense Pact, but instead, they got what Gargash called the weakest, historically, stance. This total failure of regional solidarity during an existential crisis was, without a doubt, the final straw.
So, here's what we are unpacking in today's explainer. First, we'll look at the historic breakup. Second, the economic straitjacket. Third, the choke point catalyst. Fourth, the Saudi-Emirati schism. And finally, the post-cartel energy order. Let's dive right in.
Starting off with Section 1, the historic breakup and a 15% capacity shock.
You know, the UAE's departure is arguably the biggest shakeup to this producer group since the 1973 oil embargo. OPEC is essentially losing 15% of its entire production capacity overnight, and the market reaction, instantaneous and violent. Brent crude surged to a staggering $113 per barrel today. Traders are suddenly waking up to the reality that the cartel's ability to smoothly coordinate global oil supplies to act as that crucial shock absorber has been fundamentally crippled. Without Abu Dhabi's spare capacity in the tent, the whole math of global oil supply completely changes.
Moving on to Section 2, the economic straitjacket, or basically billions left on the table. So to really get why the UAE walked away, we've got to look at the sheer economic reality they were dealing with. Geopolitics might have been the spark, but economics built a mountain of dry tinder. Look at this stark contrast. Under OPEC rules, the UAE was capped at around 3.4 million barrels per day. But the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company has a rock-solid target to reach 5 million barrels per day by 2027. So by early 2024, they were effectively subsidizing other producers by keeping over 1 million of their most cost-competitive barrels locked right there in the ground. It's like building a high-performance sports car and being legally forced to drive it in a school zone.
And hitting that 5 million barrel mark? Yeah, not cheap. The UAE has poured a mind-blowing $150 billion into a massive domestic energy infrastructure and rig expansion program just to hit that target. They are rushing to monetize their vast hydrocarbon reserves before the global green energy transition changes long-term demand forever. But under OPEC, they were essentially paying billions for capacity they were legally prohibited from ever using.
Here is the real kicker. This quota straitjacket was literally costing the UAE about $3 billion every single month in lost revenue at pre-war prices. That's according to modeling by the Baker Institute. $3 billion every month. That is an astonishing amount of money to just leave on the table to preserve a cartel that you feel is actively holding you back. It was an economic equation that just didn't make sense for Abu Dhabi anymore.
All right, Section 3, the choke point catalyst, war and the Strait of Hormuz.
So while brutal economics provided the fuel, the immediate spark was that devastating US-Israeli-Iran war that escalated sharply in February 2026. It threatened the very core of UAE's sovereignty. Look at how incredibly fast this timeline escalated. By early March, the Strait of Hormuz was effectively blockaded by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. By mid-April, the U.S. controlled the Arabian Sea entry. Caught right in the crossfire of this double blockade, the UAE was staring down a catastrophic disruption to its export routes. That's what finally pushed them over the edge. And the physical damage to Emirati assets was just absolutely devastating. Iranian missiles totally knocked out the Ruwais refinery west. We're talking a 100% loss of 417,000 barrels per day of refining capacity. Ruwais east was severely degraded. Jebel Ali port caught fire from intercept debris. And here is the bitter irony that the UAE leadership simply could not stomach. The nation attacking them, Iran, was sitting right there as a fellow member of OPEC. They were trapped in a cartel, where the victim is actually expected to subsidize its attackers' membership benefits. Just wild.
Which brings us to this incredibly fascinating puzzle. It's what we call the Hormuz paradox. The UAE is dramatically breaking its quotas so it can pump up to 5 million barrels a day, right? But right now, with a 94% drop in commercial traffic through the Strait of Hormuz because of the war, they physically cannot export that extra oil. Their only alternative, the Fujairah pipeline, is already maxed out. So you have to understand, their exit isn't about flooding the market today. It's a hyper-strategic setup for tomorrow. Next up, Section 4, the Saudi-Emirati Schism, a rivalry exposed. You know, the failure to keep those vital export routes open, it just laid bare these massive, deep fractures in the Gulf Cooperation Council. The OPEC exit is really the ultimate manifestation of a rapidly deteriorating, highly competitive relationship between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. This battle for Middle Eastern supremacy is everywhere. In foreign policy, the UAE took a super hawkish stance on Iran while the Saudis hedged their bets. Militarily, they're fighting outright proxy wars. I mean, in December 2025, Saudi forces actually bombed UAE-backed Yemeni separatists. And economically, Saudi Arabia's Program HQ is aggressively trying to poach multinational corporate headquarters right out of Dubai. But really, at the end of the day, the core of this OPEC dispute comes down to two completely different economic playbooks. Saudi Arabia desperately needs high oil prices to fund Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's trillion-dollar gigaprojects like NEOM. The UAE, on the other hand, has successfully diversified its economy. An incredible 75% of the UAE's GDP is now non-oil. Because they aren't nearly as sensitive to price drops, they favor a volume-based growth strategy, just pumping more oil to capture global market share, even if it drives down the price per barrel. The Saudi and Emirati economic clocks are just ticking at totally different speeds.
Finally, Section 5, the Post-Cartel Energy Order. Welcome to the era of the sovereign producer.
So what's the big takeaway here? What does this massive structural realignment mean for the future once the fog of war finally clears? Well, this shift is permanent. As analysts have been pointing out, a structurally weaker OPEC is going to find it incredibly difficult to stabilize prices going forward. Abu Dhabi is executing a really long play here. When that blockade inevitably ends, their massive 5 million barrel a day capacity is going to be locked, loaded, and ready to flood the market, entirely unconstrained by restrictive alliances. We are officially shifting from coordinated market management into an era of fierce, uncoordinated global competition.
This historic divergence leaves us all with a pretty provocative question to chew on. As the UAE flexes its sovereign independence, is this the definitive end of the cartel era for global oil? Are we going to see other producers follow suit and prioritize volume over unity? One thing is for sure, the global energy map is being redrawn right before our very eyes. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this complex explainer. Please share this with your friends and subscribe to the channel for such videos.